Okay.
So, and I'm in Portland. So, yeah, we're not even gonna have friends over. We're just gonna like throw a turkey breast in the oven and like call it a day.
Nice. As casual as it gets.
Exactly.
So where are you now?
Yeah, so we're in Portland, Oregon. And yeah, we've been here for like, what is it, since 2014, since like July 14. So, yeah, six years ish,
Cool.
6.5 years.
How do you like Portland?
Oh, I love it. We absolutely love it up here. It's like, you get actual seasons. So like right now it's like cold and rainy. The spring is amazing. Summers are hot. Um, and then yeah, the like fall is just gorgeous. It's so lush. There's so many trees and like moss everywhere.
Yeah.
That like when the trees start to turn, it's just like
Do you like to do a lot
amazing.
of
And all you want
hiking?
to do is like have a like hot apple cider with rum in it and like, cozy up in your couch
Yeah.
and look outside your window.
Yeah. How cold does it get there? Does it snow in Portland?
Yeah, so it'll snow anywhere between January and March, but typically very little. Like, I think one of the like worst years, which was like 4 years ago, 3 years ago or something,
Yeah.
there was like a foot of snow.
Okay.
Um, so I think that's typically as worse as it gets, and it'll last. It'll come down for like a few days, and if it's really bad, it'll last for like a week or two.
Yeah.
Everything kind of shuts down because the city's not really meant to handle it.
Yeah.
Um,
You get like 1 inch of snow and everyone like freaks out.
yeah, I think that year that was really bad. We actually like borrowed plows from Seattle because we just like didn't have the equipment to like handle snow.
Yeah.
It's just really
No,
weird.
on the East Coast, there's a lot of cities like that. Especially more towards the south, they get like 1 inch of snow, and pretty much the city goes on lockdown.
Yeah,
Yeah. Cool.
yeah.
So why don't you start by just giving an intro? Your name, everything. Introduce yourself to people, and then kind of what you do, and yeah, what kind of the floor is yours.
Sweet. Yeah. So my name is Freddie Carthy. I'm a software engineer. Been doing this for about 10 years or so. And I've traditionally mostly focused on front end stuff. Over the past year, I've been much more full stack. But historically, I've been, you know, early days, like jQuery. Oh, there's my cat. Early days, like jQuery world, and then sort of like moved on to Backbone, dabbled into Ember,
Yeah.
and eventually landed in React. Um, yeah, I currently work at Twitter. I'm a senior engineer at Twitter. I've been there for about a year since last December. I work on a team called Customer Experience Apps. We own and support a lot of the tools that advertisers use to create their advertising campaigns on Twitter. So,
Okay.
like creating promoted tweets and sort of like setting their budgets for and their audiences for who those tweets are going to show up.
Yeah.
And
Cool.
yeah,
I
so
guess
that's
I'll ask first, since you were, kind of started out using jQuery and a lot of the lower level stuff. How do you feel about React and all of the newer front end frameworks? I actually used Ember too, and it seems like I don't know where Ember's at right now, but it seems like React is even more kind of lightweight to use and more modern to use than Ember. Maybe more mature is the word. I don't know. But what do you think about all of the new front end frameworks?
yeah. I mean, obviously, like this stuff seems to sort of like almost like reset and change every like 5 years. There's like some new paradigm, right?
Yeah,
But I think the great thing about React, at least the way that I see it, I'm totally biased just because that's what I like. That's what I've been working on for a long time. But I like that mostly you're just writing JavaScript, right? Like there's no like sure there's like some like conventions and some like built-in stuff that comes with React,
yeah,
but but you're largely just writing like plain JavaScript, and it's again, coming from like Backbone world and Ember world, and jQuery world, it's a breath of fresh air for me just to be able to like just focus on
The business
like
logic stuff.
exactly, yeah. And so I absolutely love it. I think it's fantastic. It's got obviously a huge community behind it, and I think currently it's like the default, if looking at what companies are looking for out there as far as like requirements for a job, that tends to be the number one thing right now.
Yeah, it's definitely a hot topic, and I see a lot of movement JavaScript into the Web3 world as well. So I guess we'll see how that all unravels.
Yeah, definitely. I have not dabbled with Web3 at all yet. I'm sort of like, I'm curious about it, and I'm interested. Um, but there's only so many hours in the day, and it's like
Yeah,
you.
yeah, I, I feel the
I've
same.
got two kids. I've got plenty of things to keep me busy throughout the day that
Yeah,
I have not been able to like dive in and just like play.
yeah.
Uh,
I feel like whenever I do go into Web3, it's going to be like full heads down mode.
yeah,
I don't think I could, play around with I don't know what you want to call the opposite side, Web two. But like I feel like I don't want to spend 50% of the time doing Web three stuff and understanding that. Opposed to the stuff I'm doing now, I feel like once I transfer over to Web three, it's like over for me. Like I'm completely, into Web three.
yeah. I can understand that, and it'll be interesting to see, sort of like like there's so many companies already that are, I guess, not requiring Web3, but sort of like that's something that they're interested in, and they're starting to
Yeah,
like
you could
look
see
for
on
talent.
job postings all through like Glassdoor, Indeed, or whatever.
Yeah,
Like all of these companies are hiring Web three teams. So a lot of R&D is probably going into this.
exactly. I think it'll reach at some point, maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but like I feel like um, there's going to be like some sort of like tipping point, some oversaturation or whatever you want to call it, where it's like now that's if you want to work in web.
Wow, so I don't know what happened there. We're still recording, but I'm gonna blame it on my friend. I'm in his apartment in San Diego, so I'm gonna blame his Wi-Fi.
Yeah, no worries, man.
Sorry, but yeah, that was a good discussion. Kind of sucks that cut out there. I think we are just going over how teams are spinning up Web three positions and doing their respective R&D.
Yeah, and I was just kind of saying it'll be interesting to see sort of like what the like when the tipping point sort of eventually come. I do think eventually there'll be a point where like that it'll be difficult to find a job in web without knowing Web3.
Wow.
Um, so I don't know when that'll be, if it'll be in 10 years or 15 years,
Yeah.
but I eventually we'll probably reach a point like that.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe it's sooner than we think, just sort of like at the exponential rate that these things sort of tend to grow, and the amount of interest that's behind it.
Yeah.
But I have an opinion about it. I don't know anything about it, but I have an opinion about it.
Yeah, if you want to go more into detail, I was just going to ask. I know Twitter is pretty open on stuff that they're doing with Web three. I think I saw the other day they're trying to do something with an NFT market or something like that on Twitter.
Yeah, I certainly don't know enough to like speak intelligently about it.
Yeah,
But we did sort of announce, or I guess release, a white paper on sort of this like decentralized exchange idea. Um, yeah, recently we've also hired sort of like a head of like Twitter crypto, to kind of figure out how Twitter can sort of leverage
yeah,
technology. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see sort of like what comes of it, and how Twitter sort of evolves and looks to take advantage of it
Yeah.
over the coming years. I really, it's super early. I really don't know,
Yeah.
what they're doing over there, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm super interested in what Jack Dorsey's going to end up doing with Twitter, um, because obviously he's very interested in all of the Web3 stuff. It's just I don't know. I think he's kind of a good leader in the space. Hopefully, so we'll see what happens. I think a lot of stuff is exciting is going to come from Twitter. And the other day, I was on a Twitter Spaces where they were whoever the employees were. It was like head of development or something. They were going into opening up the API for developers to be able to build more things within Twitter. So it's gonna create a more loose environment with Twitter. And yeah, I'm just excited to see what comes from that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've been meaning to check out the new developer tools that came out recently as well. But yeah, it's exciting to see sort of like the focus on that space for sure.
Yeah,
I'll be curious to see how it all plays out for sure.
cool. Um, well, do you work on any side projects? What else do you like to do besides programming, or are there any other projects you build on the side?
So I really like, I think over the past year, I've put a lot of focus on like my own personal blog and newsletter, and which largely revolve around sort of like helping engineers kind of like be like grow and just become better engineers from a soft skills perspective.
Yeah,
I've started up some office hours, which have been really amazing. I've had some really amazing conversations um, with engineers and aspiring engineers throughout the world.
what platform do you hold the office hours on?
I just have a calendar invite with Google Meet, and
Oh,
I just
wow.
have folks like schedule, like I just have like a schedule throughout the week that with like open slots, and anybody can go on there and
Do you promote that
um,
on Twitter or on your?
what's that?
How do you promote that on your Twitter account through your subscription emails?
So I primarily just put it on my website, and then every once in a while I'll just like send out a tweet reminding people that if anybody wants to like chat, whether it's like about finding work, or
Yeah,
like career development stuff or whatever, I'll just like promote it there, and usually I'll get like a few people sign up. I tend to have like maybe just one or two engineers a week that are curious about stuff, and either they just want to like they just want to learn about my journey, or they want
yeah,
to learn like how they can interview better, or what they should be learning or focusing on, that sort of thing, or like maybe they have an interview coming up and they need a little bit of help like preparing and sort of like figuring out what they might sort of be presented with at the interview. And yeah, that's the sort of conversation that I've been having, and it's been great.
that's an awesome concept. I'm sure you're helping a lot of developers. I even reached out to you over one of your blog posts on transferring from more of a junior role to senior, because I feel like it's not talked a lot, especially in the companies that I've been. Like, of course, you have meetings with your manager, and they kind of go over what they would like to see for you to become a senior engineer. But to me, there was never like a blueprint given to me. It's like, oh, be more of a leader, own a certain area of the code base, and kind of like more general things. But
Right.
I don't think I've ever been, given a blueprint from a manager or, a mentor within the company of like, these are specific things that you can do to help you, escalate to the position of a more senior role. And I like that you went over those soft skills because I think a lot of the time people look over those soft skills, and that's something that I've been paying more attention to over time. Um, I don't know if this is a blanket statement, but like I feel like the less time I focus on code, the more impact I give to the business because I'm spending more time understanding the business value of things and
Right.
understanding context from different teams, whatever that might be. And once I gain the understanding as a business sense, I can go into the code and do that kind of thing. But yeah, that's kind of my take on it. What do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is that it's unfortunate that you've never been given like you mentioned, sort of like a blueprint, or in other words, a career ladder or something that you can lean on um, to sort of know what your employer expects out of each level,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, that I think is incredibly helpful for yourself to like understand. One is like what the company values at each level and what they're expecting you to do. Um, but also sort of like when review time comes, sort of like give you something to like um, to keep them honest as well, right? It's almost like a
Like a
contract,
two-way
you
street.
know.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I mean, it's a really difficult thing because every company seems to effectively have a completely different standard for what a junior, mid, or senior engineer is. Um, I can certainly say that, my last company where I was at for like 5.5 years, I was there, I was there as a mid level for like 3 years, and then I became an engineering manager for about 2 years. Um, and then I went back to see, because of COVID, we had some layoffs, and, a lot of the team was let go, which was super sad. And, at that point, I was lucky enough to stick around, and I didn't really have a team to manage. So I went back to engineering, and that's when I became a senior engineer. But I can say with certainty that the standards there for being a senior engineer at a small startup was like, you know, I don't know, 1/20th of what Twitter sort of like expects out of a senior engineer.
Yeah.
Um, and so like for me, when I came on to
So
Twitter, like
when you
that was a
say when you say
huge sort of,
1/20th, do you mean like skill wise? Do you mean effort wise, or just kind of everything? Is there anything in particular you mean there?
so yeah, so I think overall I kind of mean like the responsibilities and what you're expected to do, like what what entail like on paper what you should be doing as a senior engineer.
Okay.
Leading projects, mentoring, right? Like writing documentation, writing like technical documents, bringing consensus across teams, so like having a really good understanding of like dozens of systems. That that was a very different experience than what my last place was,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, and so I think, yeah, I think it's definitely, obviously it's a hot topic. Like, what is a senior engineer, and how do you become one? But at the end of the day, it's like it's very different depending on where you work. But I think the things that are certainly there, I'll caveat that by saying that there's certainly a lot of common themes. Like each place might have very different requirements, right? Like the technology is different. Maybe they have like different standards for how much you should be contributing, or things like that. But there's like other themes that are very consistent throughout, right? Which are the thing that I always talk about, which are the soft skills, right? It's like, how do you communicate,
Yeah.
and how do you like report progress, and how do you fact find, and how do you
Yeah.
document stuff, and how do you like um, you know how do you talk and bring consensus across teams, things that aren't necessarily writing code.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. 100%
those are the
agree.
things that I found that when I lean on, I, like you said, I end up sort of like finding success.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think you're right. Like there is definitely a common theme of like that communication skill that you need. And in my position recently, I've definitely found different ways to communicate, and sometimes you have to figure out which ways are best for your team. Like something that I've never really done before, I guess because I was always in person or I was always closely attached to my teams. I've been sending out emails like on Fridays, on Mondays, just to give constant updates on, how our project is looking. Are there any roadblocks? Timelines, stuff like that, just to keep everyone in the loop. And that actually, it's been a real help for us and a real help for me. So I think, I guess wrapping that up is just generally saying, there find the different ways to communicate and figure out which is best for your environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also communication comes in like many different forms, right? So it's like how how do you communicate during your daily stand up, and how do you write documentation, and
Yeah,
how do you give feedback in a PR?
yeah,
Like all of those things are sort of like under the umbrella of communication.
yeah,
And and how do you pair with other engineers when you're trying to work on a problem together, right?
yeah,
um, there's so many things that fall under communication, and each of them are kind of like their own little special skill, but at the end of the day, like you're kind of rated on, do you communicate well? Are you a good communicator?
yeah.
So it's like there's lots of ways to like improve that skill. That doesn't necessarily mean, can I sit in front of a camera and talk to 10 people effectively,
Yeah. Yep. I definitely agree. Maybe your office hours would be a good thing to go over that more if anyone else has questions or is interested in that topic.
Oh yeah, I love talking about that stuff. So
Yeah.
if anybody wants to sign up, I'm definitely open.
Cool. So we came on a little late. I'm not sure how much more time you have. 5, 10 minutes. You need to
Yeah,
go.
I've got a couple more minutes.
All right. Cool. Is there anything that has been on your mind recently of any current events or new technology you're into or anything that's been on your mind?
Um, I think mostly I've been really curious about. I haven't messed with it yet. I think they recently just released it, but uh, React Remix was something that recently was going open source.
Yeah, I saw
Um,
Catherine post that somewhere.
yeah, and they just hired Kent Dodds as part of the team, um,
Who's that?
and have yeah. So they've got they got the heavyweights, if you will,
Okay.
of the React community,
Okay.
working on that project. So I'm super curious to see what comes of that. Now that they have some funding and they can open it up for free, um,
So
it'll
is it
be
is it built on top of React?
it's a React framework, and I've never used it before, so I don't know like the super nitty gritty specifics, but I know like I read an article from Natter. He wrote it like a year ago, kind of like going over some of the pros and cons, and it seems super interesting.
Yeah.
But that's something that I've been meaning to like play around with
Yeah.
and see how it goes. My website is built on Next.js and deployed on Vercel, but Vercel, I never know how to pronounce it, but
It's actually funny. Um, the job I'm at now, we work out of a WeWork in San Francisco,
Mhm.
and there was a company in the big corner spot next to us, and I never knew who they were. And then we use Vercel too, and we were planning on attending the conference, and we noticed as the conference was getting closer and closer, the company next to us was getting more busy. And then I figured out that they pretty much run out of that office. So
Oh,
I've seen the CEO of Versal run in and out a couple times, which was cool. But yeah, so I know it's pronounced Vercel only because I've heard them talking here and there. So
so
definitely
it's
Vercel.
settled then.
Yeah,
I
it's
finally
settled.
knew.
But yeah, what's it called? Remixes, the React framework?
It's just Remix, yeah, React
Remix.
Remix.
Yeah. Have you used the GitHub Autopilot yet?
No, I haven't. I know we've um, given Catherine a lot of jabs about that, but
Yeah,
I haven't used it yet. Have you used it?
I have not. I
It seems super interesting and pretty wild, but
I'm
I'd love to
confused on
play
its
around with it.
limitations. Can it do like how much can it do?
I don't know, but based on the examples, it's pretty powerful.
Yeah,
And I imagine that they're like iterating on that, quite a bit.
yeah,
And it's just, it's pretty ingenious. I mean, having, you know, GitHub being such a massive repository for like millions and millions and millions of projects, um, to be able to like see how people write code and sort of like make these predictions on what people might sort of like AI driven predictions on what people might mean to do when they write something
yeah, yep,
is pretty genius
yeah. Pretty wild stuff. Hopefully, I can dig into Remix and GitHub Autopilot more.
for
Um,
sure.
but yeah, thank you for your time today. I appreciate you coming on and just having this discussion with me. Um, hopefully, we could get a part two sometime. I'll
Yeah,
definitely
no,
post.
for sure.
Yeah, I'll definitely post a link to your office hours or whatever you want to point at. To I think it's an awesome thing you're doing to help other engineers and stuff like that. So yeah,
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it, and we'll catch up soon.
all right, sounds good.
All right, see ya.
See you, Freddie.